Hi, book people. Back with another new release review. This book comes out today. It's How Can I Help You by Laura Sims. So this is going to be an interesting review. I loved this book, but it was nothing like I was anticipating when I read this. So hopefully I can either deter you from reading it if you're looking for something in particular, or encourage you to read it if you're open to what it actually is. So it's described as, and I mean, the summary isn't lying, but the summary is, I'm trying to pull it up, and of course nothing is working. So let me find it somewhere else. Okay, so the summary of this book is: no one knows Margot's real name. Her colleagues and patrons at a small town public library only know her middle-aged normalcy, congeniality, and charm. They have no reason to suspect that she is in fact a former nurse with a trail of countless premature deaths in her wake. She has turned a new page, so to speak, and the library is her sanctuary, a place to quell old urges. That is, at least, until Patricia, a recent graduate and failed novelist, joins the library staff. Patricia quickly notices Margot's subtly sinister edge and watches her carefully. When a patron's death in the library bathroom gives her a hint of Margot's mysterious past, Patricia can't resist digging deeper, even as this new fixation becomes all-consuming. Taut and compelling, How Can I Help You explores the dark side of human nature and the dangerous pull of artistic obsession as these, quote, transfixing dual female narrators, which was a quote from Kimberly McCreate, hurtle toward a stunning climax. So, I mean, it's definitely an accurate summary, but I think, what I was picturing when I signed up to read this arc, as I was like, oh, a library, so it's going to be some, cutesy old librarian who, maybe it was a misunderstanding as she was a nurse, or, she's, for whatever reason, she had a dark side, but has, now is just this, fun old librarian. And so I was picturing either, a traditional thriller where Patricia would come in and want to, delve deeper into Margot's background, and Margot would be kind of trying to not face her demons or whatever, or that somehow they'd end up teaming up on this dead body and there'd be a mystery involved. And that is not what we got. And I could tell pretty much, 5% in, I was like, oh, this is not the book I thought I was getting. These are not cutesy old ladies. I was like, oh, a librarian, a cute librarian and an old lady. And I was like, oh, that sounds fun. Well, middle-aged. I say old, and, I'm middle-aged. And I'm like, oh, well, but you know how it is. It's like, oh, people are older than us, even though they're not. And then, so, yes, I mean, Margot was a nurse, but Margot is a complete and total sociopath. So I thought I was kind of going to get in something light and cute, and it's very dark and very twisted. And you're essentially reading the perspective of two total sociopaths. These are both two horrible, awful people. And, I mean, very intriguing, likable in a dark, sort of weird way. But Margot, when she talks about being a nurse, she has almost a erotic sort of obsession with killing old and vulnerable people. And then Patricia is a failed writer, and she becomes obsessed with Margot and wants, essentially is, enabling her sociopathy because it's intriguing enough and it inspires her to write, so it's her muse. So they have this very sort of twisted relationship. And it's essentially just the two of them obsessing over each other. And it's just very dark, sort of, it's not erotic, but it is in a weird way. There's this very, kind of dark undertone. And I mean, it reads very fast, but I mean, you could make the argument. I saw some people were like, oh, it's an unreliable narrator. I don't know if they're unreliable as much as just awful. but they're terrible people. I mean, these are horrible human beings, and I mean, they're really fun to read. And what's really fun about Margot is that she kind of starts out by like justifying, but also sort of trying to get away from who she was. And she doesn't like to read. Even though she works in the library, she thinks books are for weirdos. She says something like, "Readers are not doers." Like she is an action woman, and readers are just trapped in their own minds and in their imaginations. And you definitely get a sense of that here. And I mean, maybe I'm missing something, and maybe this is like a whole multiple personality thing, but that's not what I got. I got like these are actual people, but they're just twisted and awful. But yeah, like this is very dark, very fast paced. It kind of reminded me a bit of American Psycho, but it's not as. And when I say it's not as dark, it's just not as graphic in the depiction of violence, but it's more subtle, but it's not so subtle that it's not disturbing. So, I mean, you're not going to get like, some of the stuff you get in American Psycho, which is just like sickening. But you are still going to get like really, really twisted perspectives of this woman who essentially gets like some sort of almost sexual climax off murdering people. And she kind of describes it in this very sexual way. And while I say sexual, like there's no sexual details. It's just the way she describes it is almost that sort of, it's almost like a sexual kind of attraction. And it's just, this book is so dark and so disturbing, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the book. And so if you like that, and if you don't mind being in the mind of sociopaths, I think you'll really enjoy it. And I mean, it's I wouldn't say it's like super unpredictable or anything, but it's just fun and entertaining and definitely different and not at all what I expected. But so it's not a thriller in the traditional sense. Like there's not really a mystery. It's not moving in a fast pace towards some kind of thrilling event. It's just really like, wow, look at these awful people, and like, how's this going to work out? But it does read very, very quickly. It's not even that long. It's like under 300 pages. But yeah, it just came out today, and I definitely recommend it. But like I said, I think it's important to note that this is not like, I kind of thought I was going to get like a Thursday Murder Club, maybe a darker version of that. And this is not, this is a completely different type of thing. So if you are sort of a fan of things like, Bret Easton Ellis, or, just generally disturbing, and actually I had read, last month I had read Come Closer by Sarah Gran, I think, where she's like basically being slowly possessed by a demon. It's kind of like that type of thing. It's psychological, a little more like the literary psychological sort of dark, disturbing fiction rather than thriller. But if you had to classify it, yes, it would be more of a thriller or horror. But it's definitely not, if you're looking for a mystery and like a fun summer read, this is probably not going to be for you. So I just think it's important to clarify that so that you don't, get disappointed if you're like, wow, this is a book about terrible people being awful. But really, really intriguing. There's some definite, like, interesting insights too into like the obsession about writing, and as somebody who writes creatively, I also really enjoyed that. I mean, it's kind of like dark, but I do think if you write for fun, or even, seriously, like, I mean, not that it's not fun, but, if like you are writing and you're publishing, or if you're not publishing, whatever, but if you know that kind of obsessive need to write, there is something in there about that too. And I think that's really intriguing. And there's some interesting things too about just like how reading, you can become like obsessive about characters and stuff. So definitely really enjoyed this. I highly recommend it. I just highly recommend it to a very specific audience and reader. So I just think it's important, because I can see a lot of people being like, well, this isn't what I expected, and then, not liking it. But I don't think there's anything that the writer did wrong. I think the writer is very good. I definitely want to read more by her. So, yeah, I highly recommend it. Check it out if this is your kind of thing. But again, dark, twisted, so make sure that you're prepared for that. All right. See you soon. Bye.